evening, my name is Arlene Herson. The name of the show is Getting to Know You, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Tonight, we're going to get to know a woman with a very special talent, a talent she has won awards for. That talent is the ability to capture the very special qualities, personality, and mood of her subjects and transfer them to a canvas. She's a portrait artist, and her portraits are hanging proudly in galleries and homes across the country. She is the only artist ever to have been commissioned to paint a portrait of John Lennon. She is Nancy Gosnell, and let's get to know her. Welcome.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you
here.
Okay, and as we can see, instead of my customary sign, which is normally here that says Getting to Know You with Arlene Herson, we're getting to know Arlene Herson in a different way because this is a portrait that you painted of me, hot off the presses. I shouldn't say off the presses because it's an original, of course, and you just finished it, and I love it. So it's an example of the kind of things that you do. You are an incredible artist. I am a fan of yours. When did you first know that you had a unique and special talent?
Well, I've been drawing ever since I was a little girl, ever since I was old enough to hold a crayon or a pencil, and I just did it naturally the way you just breathe. And I always just took it for granted that I drew, and it's always amazing to me when people say they can't draw. You know, it just happens.
Okay, I can't draw. Okay, you have an unusual family actually because you have two sisters also with unique talents. What are the talents of your sisters?
My oldest sister is a singer with the Metropolitan Opera in New York in the chorus, and the middle sister started out as an artist. She had a scholarship to the Phoenix School of Design and then switched over to photography. She decided, I'm going to take the great photographer's course, and became a great photographer. She's terrific.
Ah, okay. Was there a lot of competition growing up in a house with so much talent?
Yes. It was good, healthy competition. My sister would take a piece of paper and a pencil and sit down at the dining room table, and the next thing I knew, I'd be, looking to see what she's doing and get a piece of paper too, and we'd both start drawing. We both did portraits.
You both did portraits right from the beginning, early on?
We were always copying movie stars.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
So you knew as a child that you could get a likeness and
Oh,
make
yes.
somebody look
yeah.
like somebody.
I would draw the pictures of kids in my class instead of paying attention to the teacher.
Boy, what am I jealous. Did you decide early in life, since you knew that you could do this, that you wanted to be a professional artist?
No, not at all. Not at all. I was going to be everything under the sun but an artist. Because it was so natural, because I just did it without even thinking, it wasn't anything to aspire to, I guess. And also my mother sort of planned that I was going to be an artist, so naturally you have to rebel and do something else.
Okay, well, what did Nancy want to do?
I wanted to be a movie star.
Movie star. Oh, just the dream.
Not just an actress, but a movie star.
Okay, actually, you really kind of started to pursue that a little bit, the possibility of being an actress, not necessarily movies. You took acting lessons, I guess, to prepare you to become a movie star, or whatever your goal was at that time. Did you ever act in those days?
Not professionally, never. I never tried out for anything. I went to the Herbert Berghoff studio, and I loved every minute of it. We did the Stanislavski method acting, and it was just one of the best times of my whole life, but I never tried out for anything when I finished the course. So I was too scared. I was nervous, and I was just assumed I was going to be too tall. I'm very tall, and I just assumed nobody's going to hire me to do anything but be the chorus girl or something.
How tall are you?
I am 5'10" and a half barefoot.
Okay, that is tall, but nice. I like being tall. You didn't become a movie star, but you became a model for a while. You were Miss Northern New Jersey. You won a beauty contest, and you had entered a couple of them. I know you're laughing about, but you did, and you did win. And because of that, you won a modeling contract and became a model. Did you enjoy that?
Never. It was awful. I hated it. And I was very happy when it all came to a timely end. It was mutual. I think they hated me as much as I hated them. I don't like being treated like I'm not there or like you're a dummy, and that's the way I was treated.
Okay, well, you're certainly not a dummy. You certainly are here. I'm glad you're here. And it's kind of, you went, were you married at the time when you were modeling? And
No, I was very young, very child, 17, 18,
Okay.
something like that.
But you were young when you did get married.
I was 21.
21.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still a baby.
Still a baby. Okay. After your modeling fiasco, you became a secretary, and then you became a copywriter for an
Yes.
advertising agency with your own secretary and your name on the door. Then you, after you did get married, you became pregnant. You left that career. When did you finally decide to pursue the career you were born for, and that to be an artist?
When my second child, Hannah, my daughter, was 3 years old, for some reason, out of the blue, it just came to me. I took out my old set of oil paints and canvas, and the minute she was in bed, I started to paint again. And I was painting ferociously, like till 2, 3 o'clock every night. And of course, I had to put everything away again the next day because I didn't have a studio of my own, and the little kid would have, made a mess of everything. But I just all I could live for. I was eating and sleeping and looking at all the magazines and the books and how-to, and that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Don't ask
and
me
when
why.
Well, don't ask you. Well, I'm glad you did it. I happen to have some of your some copies of some of the people locally that you have painted portraits of. I'd like to just show some of them, just as an example, because when you were obsessed, what happened. I'm not sure which camera to put it on. I see right over here. Okay. Okay. Can you see that? Can you tell us who that is?
That's Mrs. Borg.
Okay,
From
and she's
Spring Lake.
in Spring Lake. Okay, we have now.
Joe Frankel, the mayor of Eatontown.
Okay, I'll try and do these a little bit
This
faster.
is Mrs. Iral Fox of Rumson.
Okay, better known as Roberta Fox.
Roberta Fox,
Okay,
right?
I like women with first names.
Yes, I know you do. I do too.
Okay.
That's Jack
Okay.
Laird of Laird's Applejack fame. And this is a little girl from Mantoloking, Connie White.
Okay,
This
look
is
up.
a very well-known person in the area, Beverly Annarella.
Okay, she's in Middletown, is that?
Yes, And this
okay.
is a gal who is a very pretty gal whom I painted in Bermuda a couple of years ago.
Okay, that's just an example of some of the local people that you have painted. So it's kind of good that you decided to paint ferociously for such a long time, because you have a catalog filled with numerous portraits that we're going to talk some more about after this commercial break, because we're going to take time out right now. We're speaking with Nancy Gosnell, portrait painter, and we'll be right back after these messages, so please stay right there. We're back with my guest, Nancy Gosnell, portrait painter, and for those who came a little bit late, of course, this is a portrait that Nancy did of me that I just love, and that you just finished a week ago, I guess. Okay, talking about, we looked at some of the portraits that you've done rather quickly. My portrait, we're going to talk about the portrait that you did with John Lennon and his son. But first, you are now supporting yourself as an artist. You're separated from your husband and have been for several years. You're really on your own as a single parent, but art is such a risky business. How do you support yourself?
Well, it's really all word of mouth. I don't advertise, although I'm planning to start advertising in the fall. And it's just a happy customer brings more customers. And the longer I'm in the business, the more people I paint, it's a snowball effect. The more people, the more audiences I get. So somebody who saw a portrait maybe 4 years ago will suddenly call and say, gee, I saw this painting and I loved it and I've been wanting to have it, and now is the time. And it comes in like that, just out of the blue. I never know.
Yeah, when you say that you're going to start advertising in the fall, how does a portrait painter advertise? What sort of advertising are you planning?
Well, I'm going to use one of my paintings and advertise it, I think, in the New York Times, in the New Jersey art section, so that I get a bigger audience that way. And I will travel. I have easel will travel.
Okay, you have traveled. As a
Yes,
matter of fact.
oh,
You've
yes.
traveled, to various different places to paint portraits, and it's something we talk about. You're a single parent now. You have had the mobility to perhaps to do something as a single person that if you were married, maybe you wouldn't have had an opportunity to do. But has it been difficult for you being a single parent in a suburban town?
It's difficult at times. I've had some wonderful, exciting times and been treated to just great situations and wined and dined, and it's also been very lonely for long stretches of time, too. You can get buried in the suburbs, if you're not a couple, very easily. But the next thing I know, I'm going to another show or invited to a party, and you do meet other people.
Okay. And as I mentioned before, you really do, as a single person, you have more mobility that you may not have had if you were married. For instance, you wound up one summer with no particular plans. You wound up combining business with pleasure. Tell us how you did that.
This was the first summer that I was separated, and I really had no plans, nothing to look forward to for the summer, and I began to think what I could do that would be interesting. And I just decided I'll write to the cruise ships. I'd never been on a cruise ship before, had no idea which one was better than the other or what size the boats were or what they did, but I just went through the Sunday New York Times and took out 10 that I thought looked interesting, and I sat down and I typed out on my little typewriter a full-page letter telling them all about myself and what about the idea of having an artist on board as another form of entertainment for the guests. And the first 9 wrote back and said, we're not interested, or we have one already, or we would never think of doing of such a thing. And I thought, well, I guess that wasn't such a good idea. And a week later, the Kungsholm, which was really turned out to be the best cruise ship going at the time, wrote me and said, we think it's a super idea, bring your portfolio and we'd love to meet you. And I did, and we adored each other. They liked me, they liked my work. I had 2 weeks treated like one of the guests with all, the things that the guests have, to the Virgin Islands. And I kept all the money that I made portrait painting, plus had a super vacation, brought my daughter. She was also a guest. They said, by all means, bring her because she'll be, company for the other children on board because there are not that many children. And it was just super.
Okay, so you painted portraits, which you love to do.
Yeah.
You got paid for it, and you had a free vacation.
Yeah, it couldn't have been more perfect.
Okay, you have also spent summers painting in Bermuda.
Yes,
which is where you happened to have met John Lennon.
Yes.
And it was because you were in Bermuda that you wound up painting John Lennon. Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, he was renting the home of friends of mine, the people whom I first painted for when I first went to Bermuda. They have a beautiful big home on the water, and it's in a cul-de-sac, so it's a perfect spot for anyone who wants to stay incognito and private. And he rented it as Mr. Green, and even my friends wouldn't tell me who it was. Well, of course, he saw my paintings of their children and them all over the place, and he got the idea, wouldn't it be fun to bring a portrait of himself and Sean home as a surprise for Yoko? And first he was just going to have Sean done, and then he decided he would have himself done with him, which was fortuitous. And the minute I heard that, a famous rock star was interested in having, I knew immediately who it was because there were rumors that he was in Bermuda, but nobody knew where he lived. And of course, it was thrilling. Yeah.
Okay. I want to hear a little bit more about it. We're going to take a break right now, and then perhaps you can share some of the experiences that you had with John Lennon with us, and we're going to see the portrait that you did. We'll be right back after these messages, so please stay right there. We're speaking with Nancy Gosnell. We're back with my guest, Nancy Gosnell. You were telling us how you happened to meet John Lennon and paint his portrait in Bermuda. I know you're going to share some of your experiences with us, but I have a picture first of you and John Lennon. It's not taken in Bermuda. I don't know, can we kind of just get a picture?
It is taken in Bermuda.
That was taken in Bermuda. That was during the time that
right after the painting was finished.
After the painting?
Yeah, I just finished signing it. So.
Okay, and we also have the portrait, which is really very, very, very special. Just want to make sure I have it right, and I hope that you can get an angle on it. This is the portrait that you did of John Lennon and his son Sean. While we're looking at the portrait, perhaps you can tell us what some of your feelings. What was John Lennon like?
He was very intelligent, very serious about life, and at the same time, one of the funniest people I ever met. He could imitate anybody. He had a voice register that was remarkable. He could imitate a voice as deep as the, I forget his name now, the statesman that I can't remember his name now, but he could go way up high and way down low. And he was very philosophical. He was very serious about life. He had really come to terms with himself toward the end. In the past 5 years had become very straight, from his crazy, wild, incredible life that he'd had up until then. And
Okay, but first, before we even go into all those other things about him, we're showing him with his son Sean. What was the relationship that he had with Sean?
oh, it was the most natural, the most beautiful, and the most tender relationship between father and child I have ever seen. The little boy would just melt into his arms, just like a baby does with its mother, or just walk off and run and play. He's a very self-possessed little boy, a delight, intelligent, sophisticated, without being obnoxious about it. He just was very naturally sophisticated and easy to be with. And I commented to John, what a super little boy. He was only 4. And, 4-year-olds are usually jumping all over the furniture and getting into your hair. And he said it's because of his diet that he would never let him have any of the soda pop or any the stimulants that American kids certainly are fed from morning till night. Any of the junk food, he only drank natural juices and very little milk. Mainly a kind of a Japanese cuisine. They had a Japanese nanny living with them and cooking.
And a Japanese mother.
And of course the Japanese mother, yeah, right.
He shared some of his feelings about Yoko Ono with you. What were some of the things that he said to you about Yoko?
Well, he met her at a cocktail party in New York when he was overweight and really in a bad way physically, health-wise. And she hardly was aware of him. She was very much into the avant-garde art scene in New York and a star in her own right, and very relatively unimpressed with John Lennon, who was a Beatle. And I think that sort of knocked him for a loop to begin with. And she was wild-looking and wonderful, and he really just flipped over her. She took one look at him and she said, "Man, you're dying." And she put him on a brown rice fast for a week. That's all he was allowed to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And what it does is it clears out your innards and gets you ready to start really eating properly. And so she took him in hand. He credits her with saving his life, really. He just couldn't say enough wonderful things about her. He thinks she's the most beautiful woman that ever was, the most intelligent, the most talented. It was great, really.
Okay. Well, actually, she ran the business. She was in business for herself.
Yeah.
She ran his business interests. He stayed home. He was what he called himself a house husband. How did he feel about raising the child and being the one that was at home while Yoko was working?
He was very comfortable with that role. He loved it, and it worked out very well for all of them. She was obviously the business woman. He is not a businessman at all. He hates to mention money, or I guess people took advantage of him all the time, because he's very generous, and he just hasn't got a business head at all. So she was the logical one, and he loves having Sean with him. He took Sean with him everywhere, no matter everywhere he went. That's what was so sad about the ending there, because I felt so sorry for Sean. He had his daddy with him from the moment he was born.
Okay, you had told me that John Lennon had no intentions of sending Sean to school.
No, he had bad experiences in school and with institutions all through his life, and he wasn't about to have Sean endure that. He was going to teach him at home himself or have a tutor, but certainly not go to any public or private institution.
Yeah, gee, what a shame he was taken at the time that he was. We'll be right back. We have to take a break right now. We're speaking with Nancy Gosnell. She's sharing some of her experiences with John Lennon, and we'll be back in a minute. We're back with my guest, Nancy Gosnell. In talking about some of the things that John Lennon has shared with you, he told you the experiences with, at one point, we all know that Ringo Starr was not the original drummer. And at one point, the Beatles did not have a drummer at all, but they had a reason for not having a drummer. Do you want to tell us that story?
Yes, they were all very poor when they first started out, and they were playing in these little dives in Liverpool. And they had what was called teddy boys in those days in London, which was the equivalent of our black leather jacket types with the sideburns here. Very tough guys, and really you don't want to mess around with them. And of course, John and all his musicians were skinny little characters and weren't about to get into to mess around with these people. But of course, Paul McCartney had these great big eyes that the girls would go crazy for, and these teddy boys would bring their girls to hear the music, and the girls would all flock right up to the microphone and just look at Paul, and that would make the boys crazy, so they would lie in wait for the musicians in the alley. So the boys had to time they were so poor that they couldn't afford a car of their own. They had to take the bus home. So they would time their run from the back of the stage to the bus, and they had to run through this alley, and of course everybody had to pick up their musical instrument and run with them. So that's why there wasn't anybody with any drums. He would never have made it.
That's very interesting.
One instrument. That
We
was
don't
it.
envision the Beatles traveling from place to place by bus and running and carrying their instruments. Did he tell you why Ringo Starr was selected finally as a drummer?
Yes, he was considered the second best musician in Liverpool. And the reason that he took the second best was the first best was a very strong personality, and he could tell right away that there was going to be conflict because he wanted to be the leader. He really was the boss, and he didn't want anybody, arguing with him.
John Lennon was
And Ringo
the leader.
listened,
Okay,
yeah.
Ringo would kind of... While you were painting John Lennon, you are, by the way, as I had mentioned initially, the only artist ever to have been commissioned to paint a portrait of John Lennon. He told you about his plans for the future. What was he planning?
Well, he couldn't wait to get back to New York and just start, embarking on his career again. He was going in, feet first. And he had been spending the summer in Bermuda writing the music for that new album, and with Yoko. And he was going to stop being the house husband, and really go into music again full force, but writing for adults this time. Music for the 30s and over, people who had been divorced and separated. He said, I would relate to his music, for instance. And Paul McCartney, for instance, is still writing for kids, basically. And he was tired of that. He really wanted to change his style.
Okay, and that was just as he was getting ready to put out Double Fantasy, which has become an enormously successful. Every time I hear starting over, I think it's like, because he was starting over.
Yeah.
And it's, and you're starting a new facet of your career. Actually, in addition to portrait painting, you had wanted to be a movie star way, way back then, but you are acting now. I just saw you act. I was knocked out in Midsummer's Night Dream in your church. You were in a church performance. Now you've been performing at Brookdale Community College in their
Well, I haven't
theater.
performed yet.
Okay,
We're in
yes, right.
rehearsal.
Okay, but it will be in Da, one of the leading parts. What made you decide now to go in and to act again?
Well, to make a long story short, I became born again last fall, and having done so, it has given me confidence and a sense of myself and courage, I guess, to do the things that I've always wanted to do and never have done, and a sense of I'm never alone again anymore, and I'm doing the things that I want to do. I'm acting. I'm taking sailing lessons for the first time in the fall. I want to take horseback riding lessons. I have a lot of plans. It's really changed my life. It's changed me, and I'm very happy about it.
Okay, I really would want to understand how that's changed you. How did you become born again? I mean, this is kind of a...
Well, it's really too long and involved to go into at this time. My sister and her husband were born again 7 years ago. They live in North Carolina. And it had changed their lives completely. And I wasn't ready 7 years ago to go along with them. But this last fall, I went to visit them. I was painting in North Carolina in a nearby town and spent some time with them. And during that time that I was with them, I had a religious conversion, and it was fantastic.
And it's changed your life.
Completely.
And you have made it as a portrait painter. You're making it now as an actress. Just in the 30 seconds that we have left, what would you advise to somebody out there who perhaps has some talent? What should they do? How should they
Work
pursue
at
it?
whatever it is you want to do. Work at it every day. Just don't put it off for your lesson time, or basically find a great teacher, find a really good teacher, and work every day.
Okay, and you're a teacher. You also teach.
Yes, come to me.
Right, you also teach art, and I'm really glad that you were able to come here and share with us.
Thank you for having
being
me.
a guest on my show. I hope that you have enjoyed getting to know Nancy Gosnell. I know that I certainly have, and that you'll join us again next week. Meantime, good night. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.